The rock sits a hand above your face. You are lying on your side because there is no other way to lie in here. The hammer swings from your elbow, never from your shoulder, because your shoulder has nowhere to go. The lamp burns at your knee. It is the only clock you own. When the oil runs out, the shift runs out, and the oil does not care what your lungs have been doing for the last 10 hours. You taste the dust before you feel it. It is faintly sweet on the tongue. That is how you know it is silver. Now keep that taste in your mouth and walk 25 miles north. The city wakes up in layers, and every layer has a smell. First the bread ovens, because the slaves who bake start before the sun does. Then smoke from 1,000 small fires, burning olive wood and dry dung. Then the animals coming in through the gates, goats and donkeys and the sheep for sacrifice, leaving their mourning on the street stones as they walk. Then the fish, hauled up from the harbor in wet baskets, already turning in the heat. Then the people, wool that has not been washed since winter, oiled skin, garlic breath, wine sweat. You wake on a mattress stuffed with wool or reeds, in a room with a dirt floor and no window worth the name. Your house is mud brick. Thieves in this city do not pick locks. They dig through the wall with a stick, and the word for burglar means the man who digs through walls, which tells you everything about how solid your home is. You piss into a clay pot in the corner. Someone will throw it into the street, or sell it to the fuller down the road who needs old urine to clean cloth. Nothing here is wasted. Nothing here is clean either. Breakfast is bread soaked in wine. That is not a poetic description. That is the meal. A piece of barley bread from yesterday, hard as a roof tile, dropped into a cup of wine cut with water until the bread goes soft enough for your teeth. You have bad teeth. Everyone has bad teeth. The grain is ground between two stones, and the stones give back a little of themselves with every turn. So every loaf in this city carries grit, and every set of jaws in this city is being filed down slowly from the inside. You eat standing. You are out the door before the shadows shorten. 25 miles south, the day starts differently, because it never really stopped. The mine at Laurion does not have a gate you walk through. It has a hole. A square shaft cut straight down through limestone and schist, about the width of 2 men shoulder to shoulder, going down through the dark for 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 and more. The sides are notched with little cuts for hands and feet. There is a ladder in some of them. In many of them there is only the notch and your grip and whatever the last man left behind on the rock, which is grease and sweat and blood. You go down carrying your own light, a small clay lamp filled with olive oil, with a wick of twisted flax. It gives about as much light as 1 candle, and it will be the entire visible universe for the length of your shift. The temperature changes as you drop. The surface heat lets go of you at 40 feet. By 80 feet, the rock is cool and damp, and the air stops moving entirely. By the bottom, there is no wind, no sound from above, no way to know if it is noon or midnight. The shaft above you is a gray square getting smaller. Then it is a gray dot. Then somebody at the top hangs a basket over the opening, and the dot is gone too. At the bottom, the shaft opens into a gallery, and the gallery is the part nobody prepares you for. It is about 3 feet high, in places less. The Greeks cut galleries to the height of the seam they were following, not to the height of the men following it, because the men were cheap and the rock was hard. So the tunnel is the size of the silver, and you are the thing that has to fit inside it. You will not stand again until you come out. Back in the city, you are walking to the agora with your hands empty and your mouth full. Not full of food, full of money. Your clothes have no pockets. A pocket is an invention that has not happened yet, and the silver coins you carry are genuinely small, some the size of a fingernail clipping, thin enough to bend between 2 fingers. So you do what everyone does. You tuck them inside your cheek, between the gum and the jaw, and you walk to market with your day's wages parked next to your molars. Men here spit their change into their palm at the fish stall. Hold that image. It will matter later. The agora at mid-morning is the loudest place in the Western world. Sellers shouting from under awnings. Money changers behind tables of coin. Barbers cutting hair in the open because the barber shop is where the gossip lives. Bodies pressed against bodies in the heat. Flies everywhere because the fish stalls sit in full sun and the drainage is a gutter down the middle of the street. You are here for two reasons. You are here to eat later. You are here to vote now. If the assembly meets today, you go up the hill to the Phoenix before dawn because the front of the crowd fills first. If you dawdle in the market, public slaves come through the agora holding a long rope soaked in wet red dye, and they sweep it across the open square like a net, and any citizen it touches walks home with a red stripe across his cloak. That stripe is a fine. The city marks the men who would rather shop than govern, and it marks them with the color of embarrassment. So you climb. You stand on packed earth on the side of a hill with 6,000 other men in the sun for hours, and you listen to speakers argue about grain ships and taxes and whether to send the fleet. Then you raise your hand. That is the whole machine. No parties, no ballots. 6,000 raised hands in the open air, and when you come down the hill, you get paid for it. 3 obols, half a drachma, handed over for the day you spent listening and voting, or for the day you spent sitting on a jury with a bronze token in your fist. It is not a fortune. It is roughly what a man earns for a day of unskilled work. It is exactly enough to keep a poor man from having to choose between his politics and his dinner, which is the entire point, and which is the reason democracy here works at all. Somebody has to pay for that. Down in the gallery, the day has no name. You are on your side, or on your back, or folded onto one hip with your knees pulled up, in a space the height of a kitchen table. The pick in your hand is iron and short, because there is no room to swing anything long. You work the rock at the seam where the pale gray ore runs, and the ore is galena, which is lead with silver hiding inside it, and it comes away in chunks and in dust and mostly in dust. The dust does not settle. There is no draft in here to move it. It hangs. It goes into your eyes and stays there, into the creases of your neck, into the corners of your mouth, and every breath you take for 10 straight hours is half air and half powdered lead. Your lamp eats the same air you do. A burning wick in a dead-end tunnel is a competitor. It takes the oxygen, it gives back smoke, and the smoke has nowhere to go, because the only opening is the shaft you came down, hundreds of feet behind you around 3 corners. They sank second shafts and cut cross tunnels specifically to make the air move. When the air did not move, men in the deep end came out gray and slow, or did not come out. The shift is measured in oil. 10 hours is what a filled lamp gives. Not 10 hours by any clock, because there is no clock. 10 hours by the flame going low and orange and small, which is the only warning you get that you have been down here long enough to be worth bringing back up. Somewhere above you, in the sun, a man is deciding what to have for lunch. Most of what follows never got carved into anything. If you want to keep seeing the version of history nobody put on a monument, subscribe and stay down here with me. So let us open the mouth of the voter and look inside it. The base of everything he eats is barley, not wheat. Wheat is the rich cousin, imported by ship from the Black Sea. Expensive, white, soft. The bread you eat at a festival, or at a wedding, or when you want a guest to notice. Barley is what the ground around Athens actually gives, and barley does not rise properly, so it is not baked into a loaf so much as pressed into a flat cake called maza, coarse, heavy, slightly sour. It sits in the stomach like a stone in a bag. The Greek meal is built on a hard little idea. There is the grain, and there is the thing you put on the grain. The grain is the meal. The thing on top is called opson, and opson is where the whole social ladder lives. 2 men eat identical barley cakes. The first man rubs his with olive oil and a smear of salt. The second man tops his with a piece of grilled fish. They are not eating the same lunch, and both of them know it exactly. Cheap option is a short list, and it repeats every day of your life. Olives, brined until they are soft enough to chew. Onions, raw, eaten like fruit. Garlic, beans, lentils, chickpeas, boiled into a thick paste that keeps you upright. Figs, fresh in season and dried the rest of the year. Eaten by the handful, the closest thing to sugar this world contains. Goat cheese, hard and salty, kept in brine. Saltfish, packed in barrels from the north. Dry, stiff, brutally salty, cut in slices and rationed out like money, because it is money. That is the daily plate of the man who voted this morning. Grain, oil, salt, olive, fig, cheese, and a small, violent portion of salted fish. He eats it with his fingers, because forks do not exist. Bread is the spoon. Bread is the plate. The soft inside of the loaf that wiped the bowl goes on the floor for the dogs. He drinks wine. He always drinks wine, because the water in a city this size is not something a careful man trusts. Never at full strength. Wine straight from the jar is what barbarians drink, and drinking it unmixed is a thing Greeks accuse foreigners of doing right before they call them animals. 3 parts water to 1 part wine. It is warm. It has resin in it. It has pieces in it. That is a normal day for a normal citizen who is not rich. Now go back underground and open the other mouth. The man in the gallery eats barley too. That is the joke at the center of this entire video, and nobody laughs at it. Same grain, same country. Roughly the same weight of it, because a body that carries ore up a shaft has to be fed enough to keep carrying ore up a shaft. What he does not get is the top. No fish, no cheese counted out for him. No figs unless he finds them. No oil beyond what greases the ration into something a throat can pass. Barley, ground rough, boiled into a gray porridge or pressed flat and eaten cold. And salt if the overseer is generous. And water that has already done other work somewhere in the mine. His food is not a meal, it is maintenance. It is fuel poured into a machine, calculated the same way you calculate oil for a lamp, and the calculation is honest about what it is doing. Feed him too little, and he stops producing. Feed him more than that, and you have wasted barley. There is a right amount, and men who own men know it to the handful. He eats it with gray hands. He does not wash them, because there is no water down here for washing, only for the ore. So every mouthful arrives carrying a little of the tunnel with it. He is eating rock, slowly, daily, for years, in doses too small to notice and too regular to survive. Hunger is not shared equally in this country. It climbs one body and walks straight past another. 2 plates, same grain, same afternoon. If you had opened your eyes in that country, which of those 2 mouths would have been yours? Tell me in the comments. The ore does not turn into money underground. It turns into money in the daylight, and the daylight is worse than you expect. The baskets come up the shaft and the rock gets broken, first with heavy stone hammers, until the lumps of galena are gravel. Then the gravel goes into a mill and is ground until it is closer to flour than to stone. Grinding stone into flour is a thing done by arms, all day, in the open, in the sun of southern Attica, which in summer is a hammer of its own. The powder then has to be washed, because silver is heavier than the rock it hides in, and running water separates the two. So they built washeries. Flat cement floors cut with narrow channels and shallow tanks, sloped so the water runs a long, slow circuit and drops its heavy grains at every corner. A man stands over the channel, stirring the slurry with his hands and his feet, all day, bent at the waist, while the water carries the light rock away and leaves the gray wealth behind. Laurion has almost no water. That is the second cruelty of the place. So the water is caught in cisterns in winter and used again and again and again through the whole dry season, around the same circuit, through the same tanks, carrying the same lead. The men stand in it. It splashes their legs and dries on their skin and leaves them pale, chalked, ghosted from the knee down. What comes out is a heavy gray concentrate, and that goes into the furnaces. The furnaces are the part you would smell from a mile away. Charcoal fires forced with bellows, hot enough to melt the lead out of the ore, and it has to be melted twice, because after you free the lead, you have to burn it away from the silver in a shallow hearth while the metal fumes. The smoke sits low and yellow and metallic in the throat. The soil there still tests as poison today. The men at those hearths breathed it with no covering except the wool they were already wearing. At the end of all of that, after the tunnel and the basket and the hammer and the mill and the water and the fire, you have a small bright ingot of silver. It goes to the mint. It comes out as a coin with an owl on one side and a helmeted goddess on the other. It goes into a purse. It goes into a mouth. And the mouth belongs to a man reclining on his left elbow in a painted room with a garland of violets on his head. This is the symposium, and it is the most civilized thing in the ancient world if you only look at the middle of the room. 7 couches, sometimes 11, along the walls with small tables in front of them. Men lie on their sides, propped on cushions. Their feet were washed by a slave at the door. Their hands are washed again between courses by another slave with a jug and a basin, because the meal is eaten with fingers, and the fingers get greasy. Perfumed oil goes on the hair and on the chest. Rose, myrrh, iris steeped in olive oil, because the room is warm and full of men and honest about what men smell like. First comes the food. Bread of white wheat, not barley, because tonight the host is spending. Small birds, eggs, beet leaves, cheese with honey on it. Then the thing the entire table has been waiting for, the fresh fish, brought in whole on a wide dish, grilled with oil and herbs, the eyes gone milky from the heat. You need to understand what fresh fish means at this table. Not salted, not dried, not packed in a barrel from the Black Sea. Killed today and carried up to the city while the flesh still holds. That is the single most reliable way to show a room that you are rich. And Athenians wrote comedies about the fish market the way people now write about supercars. The eel from the northern lakes, thick as a forearm, wrapped in beet leaves and steamed, was the emperor of the plate. A large fish on your table was a public statement, and the men on the couches read it the way a lawyer reads a contract. Then the tables are taken away. The floor is swept of bones and shells and the bread that wiped the plates, and the second half of the night begins, which is the part they actually came for. A great wide bowl is carried in and set in the middle of the room. Wine goes in, water goes in, and one man is chosen to decide the ratio, which makes him the closest thing this room has to a king. Weak mixture and the night stays polite. Strong mixture and somebody will be carried home. Cups are dipped and passed. Garlands are handed out. Someone sings badly. Someone recites. A hired girl plays the pipes in the corner and is not, in any sense that would comfort you, free to leave. Late in the evening they play a game with the last mouthful in the cup. You flick it across the room at a bronze target and you say a name while you do it, and the way the wine lands is supposed to tell you whether that person loves you back. Grown men, drunk, reading a splash like a prophecy. The floor of that room by midnight is wine, oil, fish spines, olive pits, and wet white bread. Slaves clean it. They are in the room the entire time. They pour, they carry, they hold the basin, they stand against the wall between tasks with their eyes down, and in the whole literature of the symposium, they are as close to invisible as furniture. Now the part where the picture in your head gets broken. The Athens you were taught is white. White columns, white statues, white steps, clean lines against a blue sky. A place so tidy, it looks like an idea rather than a town. Every school book, every film, Every marble copy in every museum has trained you to see a city the color of bone. It was painted, all of it. The temples on the Acropolis carried deep red, strong blue, green, and gold across the upper stones. The statues had skin tones, painted eyes, colored lips, real metal jewelry, and sometimes real eyelashes set into bronze. Stand in front of one, and it stared back with an almost unpleasant amount of life. The white, you know, is what 2,000 years of weather did to the paint. The rest of the city was not marble at all. Mud brick, dirt streets, wandering lanes with no plan behind them, dust in summer and mud in winter, and drains that were mostly a slope in the road. Visitors wrote about how shabby it looked, how a traveler arriving expecting the greatest city in Greece finds a straggle of houses and wonders if the reputation was a joke. So take the clean marble out of your head and put the paint back on, and then go one step further and ask the question this whole video has been walking towards. Who paid for it? Not the temples, the voting. Because the day and the sun on the hill, the raised hand, the obols for the jury, and the obols for the assembly, the whole apparatus that let a poor man govern instead of work, costs money every single day. And the money has to come from somewhere that is not farming, because farming in Attica is thin and rocky and barely feeds the place. It came out of the ground at Laurion. 50 years before the assembly pay, the mines hit a rich new strike, and the city stood in the open air and voted on what to do with the windfall. One proposal was to hand it out, a few drachmas to every citizen, a direct payment of the silver into the hands of the men who had voted. The other proposal was to build ships. They built ships, 200 of them, and when the Persian fleet came, those ships were waiting at Salamis, and that is the afternoon that decided who the Athenians were going to be. The silver built the navy built the empire. The empire and the mines together paid the daily wage that made the democracy possible for anyone who was not rich. Which means the vote of the poor free man was funded, obol by obol, by men lying on their sides in a 3-foot tunnel, who would never in their lives be allowed to raise a hand about anything. If a fact like that hits harder than anything you have watched this year, leave a like. It puts this in front of people who were never told it. And here is the arithmetic, in the plainest form the sources give it. You did not have to own a mine to earn from one. You could own men and rent them out by the day. One Athenian, famous, respected, a general the city trusted with its fleet, kept 1,000 slaves and leased them to the mine operators at 1 obol per man per day. 1,000 obols a day, arriving without him lifting anything, and the contract said only that the number returned at the end had to match the number sent in. If a body broke, the renter replaced it. The bodies were a line in a ledger, and the ledger balanced. He was not unusual. He was simply the one whose numbers survived. 20,000 of those workers walked away in a single stretch of the war, the moment an enemy fort in the countryside made escape survivable. 20,000 out of one district, from one industry. That is how many mouths were being fed gray barley so that 6,000 hands could go up on a hill in the sun. Evening comes to Athens the way it comes to a place with no street lighting, fast and total. The shops fold up. Men who spent the day arguing go home along lanes with no lamps, the ones with money behind a slave carrying a torch, the ones without money feeling for the walls. Doors shut. Dogs take the streets. Inside, dinner is small. Barley cake, olives, a wedge of hard cheese, 3 slices of salt fish laid out like coins. He eats with his fingers and drops the spines on the floor. Wine, watered, warm, from a cup he shares. 1 clay lamp on a stand, burning the same oil that burns in the mine, giving the room a circle of orange about the size of a table, and darkness everywhere else. He is not rich, he is a citizen. There is a difference, and it is the difference the whole city is built on. He goes to sleep on wool with grit in his teeth and a red wheal of sunburn on his neck from standing on the pinnocks all morning, and he has, in every way the law recognizes, had a good day. He did his duty. He got paid for it. He ate fish. Evening comes to Laurion as a color change in a flame. The lamp at your knee goes low. The circle of light pulls in from 3 feet to 1. That is the signal, and the signal is the only kindness the day offers. You back out of the gallery the way you came in, on knees and elbows, dragging the last basket, because turning around is not something the tunnel permits. Then the shaft and the notches, and 200 feet of climbing with lungs that spent the day filtering rock. At the top, the air hits you, and it is warm and dry and full of charcoal smoke from the furnaces. And it is the best thing you will smell all week. Somebody counts, not names, heads, the number that went down against the number that came up, because the number is what the contract is about. If it does not match, a note is made, and a replacement is sent for, and the tunnel is worked again tomorrow by whoever is standing closest. You eat gray barley with gray hands. You sleep near the shaft because you are not going anywhere, and in some of these operations men slept in leg irons and were buried still wearing them, which is how we know. Then the oil is filled and it starts again, and the seam runs another 200 feet in the dark ahead of you. Both men had silver in the mouth that day. One carried it under his tongue, 3 small owls, warm from his own body, wages for a morning of raised hands in the sun. He spat them into his palm at the fish stall and bought something with eyes. The other breathed it. Ground fine, hanging in dead air, sweet on the tongue, going down with every meal and every breath and staying there. The same metal, the same day, 25 miles apart. One of them could spit it out. The paint came off the marble. The owls in the museum cases are worn smooth by 2,000 years of hands, and nobody looking at them can tell which ones came out of that hill, because silver does not remember where it was found, and coins do not carry the lungs that paid for them. That is the thing worth sitting with. Not that they had slaves. Everyone in that world had slaves. It is that the freest arrangement anyone had yet invented, the one we still name our own systems after, was paid for daily, in cash, out of a hole where the ceiling was 3 feet high, and the men inside it were counted the way you count tools. The hand went up on the hill. The hammer went down in the dark. Same country, same afternoon, same silver. There are other tables and other holes in the ground, and they are all on this channel. Tell me which century you want to be dropped into next.